What's up, gamers? It's been a while since I've reviewed a mini PC, but in this tiny box, there is some serious compute power. It even has its own dedicated GPU. I think there's a lot to love here, and I can't wait to show you more. Let's get into it. Now, like I said, this does have a dedicated GPU, and so I'm going to go ahead and start showing you some gameplay footage while I talk about what's in the box, the build quality, and some tech specs. Now, as you saw, the box is pretty small, and the only things in there are the computer itself, the HX99G, the power adapter, one HDMI cable, a mounting bracket, and the user manual. So obviously you'll need to provide your own keyboard, mouse, and monitor to get things really going. Now, the build quality of the HX99G is rather interesting because it's 70% carbon fiber material and 30% resin. It has this really interesting honeycomb design on the air intake side of the PC, and I think this gives it a pretty neat look. It's all put together pretty well. I feel like all of the ports feel secure, like none of them are going to break when I'm inserting a cable into any of them. It does have rubber feet on one side so that you can lay this horizontal, but it comes with this bracket so that you can also stand it up like a mini tower. And I like the mini tower look personally, but you can use this vertically or horizontally. Now, one thing that I don't like about this design is that to get into the machine, in order to maybe change out your RAM or your SSD, you do have to pull these rubber feet off to get to the screws that are underneath. And I really hate that they did that because I feel like once you pull these rubber feet off, they're not going to stay on like they're supposed to afterward. They could have just as easily put the screws or the feet somewhere else and not had one on top of the other. One other thing about the build quality and the design that I really do appreciate is the cooling system. This is a very efficient cooling system. It's equipped with 7 heat pipes, liquid metal, and dual fans. And most of the time when I'm using this doing everyday tasks, I don't hear the fans at all. I don't think they ever stop running, but they're running at such a low speed that you can't even hear them. Now, of course, that can change when you start to do some gaming or some really intense tasks like photo editing or video editing. But even when the fans are going full blast, I never feel like they're overtaking any other sounds in the room or like it's some kind of rocket that's going to take off into space. And to give that some context, I feel like it's about the same volume as a normal keyboard and mouse, but never much louder than that, if any at all. And in all of my testing, I've never seen the CPU or the GPU go above about 88 degrees Celsius. And so all that to say, I feel like the thermal system here is doing a great job of keeping everything cool so that the CPU and GPU can run optimally. Some other specs you might like to know: this is running a 7 nanometer AMD Ryzen 9 6900HX processor with 8 cores and 16 threads. It also has that dedicated GPU, which is an AMD Radeon RX 6600M, running on RDNA 2 and AMD Fidelity FX technologies with 8 GB of GDDR6 RAM. The system memory is dual channel SODIMM DDR5 RAM, and you can install up to 64 GB of that. And you have 2 storage slots here for M.2 PCIe 4th gen SSD memory. Now, for your video out, you do have 2 HDMI ports and 2 USB 4 ports. And on their website, they actually have a picture of this device, and it shows that it has 2 HDMI and 2 DisplayPort outs, and that's actually an older picture from an older model and is inaccurate. This does not have traditional DisplayPort outs. Those have been replaced by 2 USB 4 ports. So you can actually have quad displays out of this machine. You also get a USB-A and a USB-C port on the front of the device, as well as a mic in and an audio out jack. You get a couple more USB-A ports on the back side, as well as a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. And this system does come with Windows 11 Home pre-installed. And that kind of brings me to my next point, and that's that this system comes very clean. You get a very clean install of Windows 11 Home. There's no bloatware on this device. There aren't a bunch of apps popping up with ads saying, hey, buy this or buy that. It's just a straightforward, simple, clean install, and I love that. As for work performance, this is not going to have any problems doing your everyday tasks with ease. You're going to be able to check your email, work on your Word document documents and your spreadsheets and all of those kinds of things. Like here, you can see some 4K YouTube footage of Batman Arkham Knight, checking out Netflix on your lunch break, or watching your favorite YouTuber. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. But since we have this dedicated GPU, we can also do some more professional tasks like video editing or photo editing or some graphic design work. Now, you're not going to be able to edit the next Pixar movie on this thing, but if you're just doing stuff for social media, stuff that's more simple, this is going to be able to handle those tasks with ease. Now, before I get to the conclusion and who I think this is for, let's go ahead and jump into the gaming performance and really talk about this. So here we are running Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I've played around with the settings on this one quite a bit. I'm running it at 1080p. That's what I've kind of settled on for this game. Frame gen is off, AMD FSR 3 is on and set to balanced. Graphics, however, are set to high, and I left everything there as is, and the game runs really well this way. The only time the frame rate dips below 60 is when I go down here where all the people are, and loading in all those different moving parts there. It does drop sometimes below 60, but I honestly can't even tell because my monitor has a variable refresh rate, and so it just looks smooth to me. I think you can get a really great gaming experience out of this PC, even on a game like Miles Morales. You can see his reflection there. We've got the reflections turned on. See all the buildings behind him. You see that big skyscraper back there. There it is in the window. It's all working really, really well. Now, I didn't have Doom Eternal to test out today, but I do have Doom 2016. And here I'm running it at 1440p, and the overall quality is set to Ultra. And at 1440p with Ultra settings, we're generally seeing around 85 to even 120 FPS. So it fluctuates quite a bit, but an 85 on the low end, I mean, that makes this still incredibly playable and fluid. Now, I'm not very good at fighting games, but I do really love Injustice 2, and here I've used the auto config, and it set this at 1440 and very high settings, and it seems to have the cutscenes locked at 30 frames per second, but then the fights go back up to 60, and for the most part they seem to run at 60, but then when it goes to these little cutscenes it always drops to 30, so I don't know if that's just how the game is. I guess it is, but when you're in these fights it does seem to run at a pretty solid, pretty steady 60 frames per second. I am guessing that if you drop this to 1080p, it probably would run it at 60, if not more. And here you can see the benchmark test from Borderlands 3. This is running at 1080p with high settings enabled, and it's really not going to have any problems with this. In fact, we're going to be running well above 60 frames per second. And while we're letting this run here, I do just want to draw your attention to the GPU temperature and the CPU temperature. The GPU temperature is at 76 degrees Celsius right now, and the CPU temperature is at 88. And yeah, this isn't having any trouble whatsoever, so you could actually probably bump these settings up even more. Go 1440p, maybe high, at least medium settings, and you shouldn't have any problem here. And now the performance test for Arkham Knight. This is running 1440p, high settings, and you can see it's just running smooth as butter. Even out here in the rain right now, the cape blowing in the wind, we're getting well over 100 FPS. The smoke coming off the tires of the Batmobile still going over 100 FPS, and I love this game. This game still looks incredible to this day. Really, the whole franchise does. It's one of my favorite games. Now, here's some gameplay. I'm doing the DLC, the Batgirl DLC. I didn't want to wait for the whole cutscene in Arkham Knight to finish, but here, moving around, fighting some bad guys. We're hitting 90 easy. Got those sweet dual combos, takedowns. Who's left? Nobody. And one of my favorite entries in the Arkham series, Arkham Origins, boom! It runs really well also, and I've played recently the Xbox version over backwards compatibility, and one of the things I noticed was that even though, you know, the character models looked pretty good, the street signs and stuff looked terrible. They were such low-res quality, and the PC version is honestly much better. And this is the Cold Heart DLC. Sorry, the Cold Heart DLC, which tells Dr. Freeze's origin story. It's a pretty cool little DLC. But you can see that the billboards up here look very good. The street signs look incredible. There's lots of texture to them. And I mean, just check out that suit. Looks awesome. Didn't mean to do that. Blammo! And something else that's really cool is that if you have a VR headset like a MetaQuest 3, for example, you can play Arkham VR or things like Half-Life Alyx over Steam Link right to your headset. And this machine's powerful enough to do that. It's pretty incredible. Now, one really weird thing that happened to me that I feel like I need to mention is that when I first got this, I actually thought that it might be broken in some way because I was booting up these games, and I just wasn't seeing the performance that I knew I should be getting. I was having to run these things at like 900p on low settings just to hit 60 frames per second. Sometimes 1080, but a lot of times 900. And I just thought, this can't be right. And so I kept searching for an answer, and it took me about 5 days before I finally typed in the right words into Google and found one Reddit thread with about 10 responses to it. And one person in that thread said, oh, by the way, you cannot use the USB-C display out if you want to take advantage of that dedicated graphics chip. And I thought, that seems really odd, but I was using the USB-C out because of my monitor setup here at my desk. And so I switched over to HDMI, I rebooted the computer, and as soon as I did that, all of a sudden I was able to take advantage of that dedicated graphics card. Before, even if I would change the settings to force it to use the dedicated graphics, it would just boot the game into a black screen and I wouldn't be able to get out of it. I would have to restart the computer to resolve the issue. But once I switched to HDMI, I had no problems whatsoever and saw a huge boost in performance immediately. So just know, if you're planning on using the USB-C out for your monitor, you will not be able to take advantage of that AMD Radeon RX 6600M chip unless you're using HDMI out. Now, who is this really for? Well, I think there's a few instances here where this would come in really handy. One would be a place where energy costs are very high. Maybe you're looking to lower your energy bill, but you still need a computer that has a fair amount of power. This is going to consume much less power than your traditional desktop PC, but you're not going to have to sacrifice much performance, especially if your PC is already 4 or 5 years old. This might actually reduce your power bill while giving you a boost in performance. Someone else who might benefit from this is someone who just simply doesn't have a lot of desk real estate. Kind of like me. This is my little YouTube nook, and I literally have everything jam-packed into here, and I couldn't fit a normal desktop PC here. I need something that's smaller, and so this mini PC gives me the performance that I would want while still fitting in my available space. I can also see this being used by someone who doesn't want a laptop but wants to be able to take their computer from their home to their work and back to home. Maybe you have a desk set up at both places and you want to be able to work in both places, but you need a PC that's portable. This would accommodate that. And with this carbon fiber outer shell, it should keep all of the internals nice and safe as you travel. However, I don't think this is for someone who, their job is to video edit all day long. This is probably not going to give you the amount of power that you really want, or someone who just really is into gaming and wants that constant 4K or even 8K gaming. You're not going to get that out of this machine. But if you're okay gaming at 1080p, maybe even a little 1440p on lower settings, or if the games you're mostly interested in are older games and you're not really into the current AAA gaming scene, then this device might be perfect for you. So my conclusion here is that this is a great machine that packs a lot of power into a tiny space, and I see it go on sale pretty often, and I think you can snag this for a great price. But what do you think of the Minisforum HX99G? I can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and sharing this with a friend. Stay kind and encouraging out there, and I'll catch you on the flippity flip.